everybody. Lance Russell and Dave Brown right along ringside. By golly, we're about ready to go with more big action.
Thank you very much, and welcome to Georgia Championship Wrestling. I'm Gordon Soler, your host, and we have quite an hour in store for us.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Championship Wrestling at ringside. This is Vince McMahon, along with wrestling's only living legend, Bruno Sammartino.
Welcome to this week's edition of Mid-South Wrestling Television. I'm your host, Boyd Pierce, another outstanding card.
Hey guys, and welcome back to another edition of the Regional Rasslin podcast, where we talk the territories. And of course, as always, I am your host, Ray Russell, and this week we dive back into Memphis 1985. And you know what that means? Whenever we head back in time to the territory of Memphis, Tennessee, the CWA Jerry Jarrett Promotions, that can only mean one thing. It's time to bring back on our special guest co-host, Mr. Mempho himself. Here he is, Gene Jackson, to the show.
Ray, we're back in 1985 once again.
Yet again.
And a little bit of excitement going on these days.
A little excitement. You got that right.
That's right.
Whew, the Macho Man, Randy Savage, finally appearing on TV in recent weeks, guys. And unfortunately, we like to start off the show every week. We do a recap of what happened last week in the Memphis territory. And sadly, we found out that Tux Newman was back again, but that wasn't the worst part. Apparently, he has acquired the services of one Macho Man, Randy Savage.
I mean, you know, he was putting over how he's had this huge acquisition, and then he had, you know, the other names he had named. I thought, boy, this is going to go nowhere. I can't wait to hear who's going to be the big star compared to, you know, the PYTs and Sweet Daddy Siki and Lord forbid Cyclops.
Cyclops is coming, pal.
So I was like, well, we've seen Mad Dog recently. It can't be him. So who on earth could it be? And then it was Macho Man. I was like, oh, well, all right then. I'm listening. Yeah,
it's one of these things is not like the other, but in reverse, right? It's like the Macho Man sticks out as a positive. Thumbs up there.
Yeah.
Quite an acquisition by Tux Newman as Randy Savage, and he's the only one here. So that works out too.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind if it stayed that way, but we'll see.
And as we'll see, spoiler alert, guys, as we go along, Tux Newman has acquired basically the entire services of all the heels here in the Memphis territory.
Yeah, you know, that used to be a Memphis thing where, you know, you'd have a heel manager who just basically managed every heel on the roster, and I was never a fan of that, you know. Although I don't know what's worse, when you got one heel manager managing every heel, or you got four different heel managers, you know, out there all trying to outdo each other on promos, and they each have their positives and negatives. But I don't know, man. Like I've said this, you know, last week. Like, so far, I'm not blown away by Tux Newman, but you know, I've done some reading online just to kind of get a feel for what other people thought of him, and there's a lot of Tux Newman fans out there that were really impressed with him and really liked him. So I'm trying to give him another chance. I'm trying to approach this with an open mind, and you know, maybe it took him a little while to get warmed up. I don't know, or just maybe people that I'm reading on these old message boards, old kayfabe memories and stuff. Maybe it was just their nostalgia talking, and it wasn't as good as they remembered it to be. I don't know, but
yeah, maybe all the video wasn't out there at that time. I mean, going back to the kayfabe boards and whatnot. Now that we have the entire run of Tux Newman, we get to look at it through a new set of eyes, and I'm with you so far. You know, I'd always been taught through the message boards how good Tux Newman was, and I love Jeff Walton and everything he did for the Los Angeles territory, but this character here, I don't know. We'll talk about it as we continue on through the show. One thing is, I think, safe to say, it looks like J.R. Hart is no longer here.
Yes, and perhaps maybe that was the measuring stick, that like after a few weeks of J.R. Hart, people were like, oh my God, this Tux Newman is amazing. He can
blew him out of the water.
Speak. So maybe J.R. Hart had lowered the bar a lot. We'll see.
Well, we're not the only ones that took issue with the pairing of the Macho Man teaming with Tux Newman, his new manager, as even Jerry the King Lawler came out last week, tried to talk Randy out of it, talk some sense into him, that new business venture he has with Newman, going so far as to offer the Macho Man a Southern title shot right here this week on TV, should Savage ditch Newman as his manager. Now, by hook or by crook, I do believe that Jerry Lawler meant that, and I do believe that he really wants that title match here this week on TV. And we talked about it last week. Will it happen? We'll have to wait and see.
I was selfishly, I wanted to see that title match on TV, but also wanted to see Savage distance himself from Tux Newman. So I was like, well, this is a win-win. So come on, Randy, let's do the right thing here, man.
Do it to it, huh? So also last week, the Wild Hoggs showed up in the studio. Settle down, ladies. I'm not talking about the Fabulous Ones packages here. No, these Wild Hoggs are actually JR and King Harley, which are currently hillbillies, I think.
Well, initially they were, but as the show goes on, they may be evolving right in front of our very eyes. I don't know what's happening here.
Like a poor man's Godwins, because not only do they wear the overalls, at least last week, they had the T-shirts on underneath as well.
That's right. So, yeah, they come out looking like hillbilly moondogs. So we'll see what becomes of them this week.
Excellent analogy. Eddie Gilbert's army apparently has been dissolved without explanation, but that's Memphis for you.
Yeah, it is. You spend 2 or 3 weeks establishing this army, and then it's just like, you think if we don't mention it, nobody will remember?
The plowboy literally shaves his head, supposedly to join the army, to show his dedication to Eddie Gilbert and his army, and then 3 weeks later, the army is apparently defeated.
It's like, I don't know, I just picture either Lawler or Eddie Marlin sticking their head out the studio door as Eddie Gilbert pulled in the parking lot. Hey, leave your army helmet in the truck, okay? You're not going to need it.
Last week at the Coliseum, we saw a return match between the King Jerry Lawler and the AWA, we'll call him the world champion, Nick Bockwinkel. Texas death match this time around. Lawler's still coming up short, thanks in part to Tux Newman and his assistance there in that matchup, though.
You can say it 1,000 times, and hearing Nick Bockwinkel and Texas Deathmatch in the same sentence just doesn't feel right.
You know, if I didn't see Nick here in the Memphis territory as many times as he was here, saying Nick Bockwinkel in the Memphis territory never felt right either, but it worked. It always worked, as long as he was working Lawler anyway, and this was the most recent. Of course, we talked about it at length already. Rick Martel is technically the AWA champion, but here in Memphis, we're pretending that Nick Bockwinkel is, so that we can do these world title matches. And we'll talk more on that match later in this episode. But unfortunately, Lawler fails to win the title yet again. We'll have to see what happens as the year goes on. But last and certainly not least, last week in the Coliseum as well, there was a masks versus beards match. First ever, I have to think, Gene.
I would have to think so, and I'd have to think it's only happened in Memphis. I never
that I will agree
classic
with.
mask versus beard matches in Jim Crockett Promotions or down in Mid-South.
Oh, I think Jimmy Valiant lost a beard once, but it wasn't on the line when it happened. So, I mean,
true.
But here we go. So it was the masks of the interns, putting those up against the beards of the Fabulous Ones, and they were really scared about that. But also the Southern Tag Team titles were on the line. So on one side, it's the interns' masks versus the Southern titles and the beards of the Fabs, which is far more important than the actual belts.
Yes, they certainly had more to say about losing their beards than they seemed to talk about the belts last week.
They sure did. That was kind of weird. All right, guys, that catches you guys all up as to where we were last week here in the Memphis territory. Time to get rolling with another episode of WMC Channel 5 Studios. It's Memphis Wrestling at its best. Here we go. More CWA Championship Wrestling. All right, guys, here we are, Saturday morning, March the 16th now, already in the middle of March. Crazy where time goes here. And it's Lance Russell and Dave Brown right along ringside. And we kick things off right out of the gate, and here it is. Tux Newman, already out, one of your favorite promos of all time. He says, the Tux Man is here. New catchphrase. You like that, Gene? The Tux Man.
The Tux Man. I hope it catches on.
And where the Tux Man goes, the unexpected goes. What a great line there. He acquired the services of the young lad, Randy, my man, Savage, he says this week. He has also acquired the services of the man in our very first bout. Unfortunately, I'm not talking about the guy on the other side of the ring, Tracy Smothers, but rather Iron Mike Sharp.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
So here we go. It's Iron Mike Sharp with Tux Newman now as his manager, taking on Nobody Does It Like Tracy Smothers here in the Memphis territory. And though Smothers has the height advantage, it's Iron Mike Sharp who overpowers him early on, moving Tracy around the ring with ease. Sharp eventually missing a corner charge. Smothers going to unload with some big right hands. And now it's Tracy whipping Sharp into the corner, but running into a knee, and Sharp capitalizing, adjusting that armbando doom, and lowering the boom. The big clothesline going to get the win. 2 minutes and 42 seconds.
I'm pretty excited here to get to watch, as we watch 85 unfold, we're going to get to watch the early stages of Tracy Smothers' career taking off here. So that's going to be fun. And, can you imagine being Iron Mike Sharp over the period of the last few weeks? 1 week he comes in, he's managed by Jimmy Hart. Then he comes in, he's managed by J.R. Hart. Then he comes in, he's part of an army, but please don't make me shave my head. And then it's like, oh, never mind, you're not a part of the army. Now you're managed by Tux Newman. No wonder Sharp's going to be getting out of here pretty soon.
Yeah, I'll just go do jobs for Vince. At least I know what I'm doing every night.
Exactly.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I have to think if Tracy Smothers had turned those right hands into some back fists, he might have had the win here.
Oh yeah, he hadn't put that together yet. But had he done it, it would have more resembled Freddie Joe Floyd versus Iron Mike Sharp many years later than Tracy Smothers here in his early days of Memphis.
So we end the matchup. We go into commercial break. We come back from break, and Tux Newman returns, guys, introducing a video from another of his acquisitions. They just keep coming, Gene. A tag team of familiar faces to the Memphis fans. Right now, we go off to a VTR from Championship Wrestling from Florida. Gordon Soley introducing the PYTs, Coco Ware and Norvell Austin. And they say they're just like the Jacksons. They've been on a world tour, whipping everything in the Mid-South, Dallas, and now the Florida territory. But they're on their way back to Memphis. And since they've been gone, Norvell has created a monster in the new and improved Coco Ware here. And they're coming for the Fabs, the King, and all the rest.
You look at that acronym there, PYT stands for Pretty Young Things. And when you look at Norvell Austin, that's certainly the words that come to mind, I'm sure. I can't imagine any others you were thinking, Ray.
I would think that Coco Beware would be the young, right? You could probably even say Coco was the prettier of the two, most specifically, and I would give Norvell Austin the nod as the thing in this tag team. And I'm just saying, guys, yeah, I love, I had never really paid attention to a Norvell Austin promo ever because he really doesn't get the chance to speak very much, but I thought he did a good job here.
He did. I mean, Norvell was a talented guy, and, his best years were far behind him here, and he was, a lot better in the old Southeastern days. And my age, one of the early memories I have of Norvell was him trying to be a babyface in Continental against Adrian Street, paired up with Mad Maxine. And you talk about pairing Norvell Austin and Maxine against Adrian and Linda. That was...
Oh, I wish I had thought to ask her about that when I saw her down there in Orlando. That would have been a good question for her.
Absolutely.
Wow. Yeah, but Norvell Austin sticks out like a sore thumb out here doing the Michael Jackson gimmick here in the mid-1980s now. But it is what it is. The PYT's headed back, and they're managed by Tux Newman. So we'll see how that works out when they get here. Meanwhile, it's back to the ring for another return, but don't worry, it's a babyface, so he is not managed by Tux, at least not yet. Talking about the Dirty Dutchman, Dutch Mantel taking on the Invader. Dutch rocking a new gimmick here, it would seem, wearing a bearskin rug. No, wait, that's just his body here. Invader on the other side of the ring, a tall drink of water, not really sure who that would be, but Dutch just dominates him on the mat. And finally, a simple body slam and a running knee drop. Basic as it comes, gives Mantel the win here this week. 3 minutes and 16 seconds. Nothing fancy in there, but believable.
Hey, I've always been a fan of Dutch Mantel. I mean, he's a staple of Memphis wrestling. Anytime that Dutch shows back up, I'm happy because you're going to get some solid matches and some good promos. So I'm happy about it.
Yeah, Dutch would come and go, but whenever he popped up, you're absolutely right, because even if he wasn't factored into a major angle for as long as he was going to be there, you knew at the very least you were going to get some really good semi-main event matches out of him, if not if he was actually going to work the main. So I totally agree. Anytime Dutch pops up in the Memphis territory, you know that means there's an extra match on the card that's going to have quality wrestling.
Even if he's dealing with Tux Newman.
Yeah, I suppose. Unless he's wrestling Cyclops. I don't know about that, but...
Oh, Lord, yes.
He's coming, but he's not quite here yet, guys. As post-match, we get a quick promo from the Dutchman here. He says he's heard that Tux Newman guy talking trash earlier, and he's never even met him. Tux may be forming an army, but Dutch is back to his old form, and he has Shoe Baby with him to take care of the bunch.
Oh, my.
Did you catch Lance before the promo? He says, and he's got his bullwhip, Bessie, or whatever he calls it. It's Shoe Baby, Lance.
Come on, Lance. You're not getting senile yet.
It was so far off. I was like, what are you on? Where did that come from?
Yeah, I'd forgotten that until you mentioned it. But yeah, when he says that, I was like, Betsy. Because didn't Ron Bass call his whip something similar?
Miss Betsy, yes.
Miss
Betsy, yeah. And later they would recycle that with T.L. Hopper, see? So one of the Dirty White Boys had the Plunger, which was Betsy. Maybe Lance created that name. I don't know. But we continue on. Tag team action here this week. Going to see the former general, I would assume, Eddie Gilbert. Are you a former general if you're no longer in the Army? I'm not really sure how that works. But it's Eddie Gilbert teaming with Leaping Lanny Poffo, of all people, taking on David Haskins, and welcome to the studio, Tojo Yamamoto, the first time this year.
Hey, yeah, just out of nowhere, Tojo's back here and teaming with David Haskins, which, David Haskins walks this fine line of, they've pretty much used him as an enhancement guy, but he's gotten in some offense, and, he got that win over Eddie in the snowstorm episode.
Well, I look at it like this. What did they start David on? Like, it was back in January, right? Wasn't it? Or something like that.
Yeah.
And they've kept him this long. I think had he not had the talent he had, they would have never kept him around this long. That's for sure.
Oh, definitely. So, did I miss something, or does Leaping Lanny just become a heel by default?
Yes.
Joined.
Yes. See, that's in my notes I wrote, it appears that Leaping Laniel has turned heel along with his brother, which seems to disappoint Lance Russell. He expected more out of Lanny. And Lance guesses that, I love this line. Lance goes, I guess that brother stuff has something to it. So I guess because they're that brother stuff. So you're right. Randy joins Tux Newman. So what is that? What do they say? Art imitates life, right? Yeah. So just like wherever Randy goes, Lanny goes, and it works here the same way on the storylines as well.
I kind of panicked when he first come walking out there. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Did I jump an episode here and miss Lanny's turn? And then when Lance started talking, I'm like, oh, okay, it's just assumed that, okay, well, Randy's heel, Lanny.
Well, I'm sure disappointed in Lanny, but I guess that brother stuff has something to it. As David Haskins going to start here for his team to no avail, Tojo Yamamoto going to tag in with Chops O'Plenty on the heels, but double teaming going to allow Poffo to plant a drop kick on Tojo. We get a couple of tags from both sides. It goes back and forth a little bit here. And then Haskins eventually going to catch a knee to the gut from Eddie Gilbert, and Poffo tagging in, landing a backbreaker to score the win. Match goes 4 minutes and 11 seconds, and Lanny rolling out of the ring and performing a celebration backflip on the floor to end this segment.
Yes, he did. And, to your point earlier, I would definitely say that Eddie Gilbert's clearly a fan of David Haskins because he's wrestled David Haskins more than anybody during his short stretch here in Memphis. And I can't figure that's probably an accident. I'm sure Eddie's like, put Haskins in there with us, and all these different tag matches he's had, tagging with, be it Sharp or Playboy or whoever it may be. So he's definitely won the favor of Eddie, which would also lead him to getting bookings in Mid-South and getting into some other territories down the line. So it worked out good for him.
For sure. Well, we knew it wouldn't last long, Gene. We saw the fabulous ones in the studio recently. So this week, not only are they not here, but we get a VTR from just one fab. It's Stan Lane this week. What the hell goes on with these guys that they can't both be in the same place at the same time to cut these I don't understand. It's bad enough they won't come to the studio to do this, but then it's clear like they're at Jerry Jarrett's house doing it, which is probably 15 minutes up the road?
Well, Jarrett was outside of Nashville, so
okay.
But I don't know. It's like Jackie Fargo's rationing out the fabulous ones. They only get so much at a time per month. You can get them both both in the studio. Then you get Stan one week, you get Steve another week, and
I could see them doing that deal over some drinks or something. All right, Steve will do the recording this week. I'll do it next week. Then we'll come to the studio, but that's all you're getting this month.
And it probably went exactly like that, truth be told, because they weren't psyched about having to go to Memphis to be there in the studio and not get paid. How that went out when they could just sit at sit at Jerry Jarrett's house or something and run through all the different promos they had to do for Monday nights and all the different weekly shows. And I don't know, it's a strange situation. It feels that way. I just wonder how the fans feel about it in that time. They loved them so much, but then you never see them unless you're buying a ticket to the Coliseum. You're seeing very little of your beloved fabulous ones.
Yeah, because in Memphis they've been trained to see all the top stars on the TV program for the most part, most weeks.
Yeah.
Like Jerry Lawler, who was around town, but maybe you go watch other promotions and some of the bigger names weren't there every week. In Memphis they typically were, and the Fabs not so much, especially not since making a deal to come back. As Stan Lane talks Tuxedo Newman, I like that anyway, taking wrestlers and stirring them up like dirty water, making them evil, says Stan Lane. He had heard that Tux Newman is here for one reason, to get rid of the fabulous ones. I wrote, I thought that was Lawler he was here for, but okay. Stan Lane going to make it about the Fabs. He says many have tried and many have failed. That's why Jimmy Hart left. It is? I thought Lawler did that too, but okay.
Did Stan Lane pick up the wrong script? Like he thinks he's in the Lawler angles or something? Like,
I am the king. That's what I make the ladies call me. I thought that's what we were doing here. Sorry. So, he talks about getting rid of Troy Graham and the interns, so they're gone as well. That's confirmed. He says the Fabs are on a garbage detail. They're on garbage detail, Gene. They're going to get rid of trash. And it starts with Lanny Poffo, can't argue that, and Eddie Gilbert tomorrow, Sunday, at the Mid-South Coliseum.
Wow. I when you hear that, when you hear it stated as fact that the interns and our old pal Dr. Troy Graham is gone, it stings. It really does.
It does. You know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying.
You understand what I'm saying? No more coffin binds, man. I'm heartbroken.
I mean, who's going to slap the mammies at this point?
I know, right? Yeah. Troy Graham, we miss you already. But yeah, how about the inaccuracies here in the Stan Lane promo? He really doesn't give a shit. He's just talking out his ass. It's like, there, I did my 2 minutes. Are you happy?
Yeah, I mean, you're here for one reason, to get rid of the Fabs. I haven't heard Tux Newman mention the Fabs as of yet.
He's literally stated he's here. Yeah, he's literally stated he's here for revenge on Andy Kaufman and take out Jerry Lawler, right? I don't know. More on that as the show progresses. We come back and we get a promo from the King, Jerry Lawler. He saw on the format sheet that the match they discussed last week between the King taking on Randy Savage for the Southern title here on TV today is not going to happen. Boo. Instead, the format reads Macho Man versus Billy Travis. Well, that's no offense to Billy Joe Travis fans out there, but it's a little bit of a downgrade.
And Lance, why was Macho's name circled?
I like it. I dig it. As Lance Russell explaining that the match between Lawler and Savage was removed from TV because it was changed to the Mid-South Coliseum. Got to make some money. Lawler, however, doesn't want to wait until tomorrow. He doesn't want to do it in front of 10,000 people when he can do it in front of hundreds of thousands of people right here on TV, fans who may not be able to make it to the Coliseum. How kind of Lawler here to want to get it done right here, right now. And now the King, he has an extra incentive for the matchup with Randy Savage, and we're going to see why here, Gene, as we go to a VTR from the Mid-South Coliseum.
Yes, let's see how things played out.
So it is a Texas Death rematch, AWA World Title supposedly on the line. Nick Bockwinkel taking on Jerry Lawler. And then at the end of the matchup, both men are down, and we learn that the first man to his feet will be announced as the winner. They will be the AWA World Champion. And as the referee reaches 9, it's Tux Newman ringside using his cane. This was different anyway. Using his cane to help give leverage to Nick Bockwinkel, push him to his feet. And Bockwinkel beats the count 1 second before Jerry Lawler gets to his feet all on his own. And thus Bockwinkel is deemed the winner and will retain the AWA World Title, unfortunately, here tonight.
Investigation
by the AWA.
By the AWA about what happened up in Canada. And here you see 4-on-1 Lanny Poffo participating on the other side of one of these gangbangs he was talking about last week.
I told you it was coming. Well, he was sick of being the taker. He was the giver here this time around. You're right. So, like post the match, we see Eddie Gilbert and Mike Sharp hit the ring first.
I thought he usually liked to take and give, but that's another story.
At the same time.
At the same time. Glory and renown.
So it's Sharp and Eddie Gilbert, some of the King's old nemesis. They're first in to attack. Nothing new there as it's a 2-on-1 beatdown. And then we even see a fan trying to make the save. Did you catch that? There was a fan that quickly came to the King's aid, and a cop grabbed him, and man, he just ran off with him. Wherever that fan went, I hope he's still around.
Yeah, like they always say, the fans in Memphis, they still believed in when they see
coming to the King's rescue,
getting a raw deal, we got to go help him.
Well, I do believe that officer that grabbed hold of that fan and ran him out of the building, it would appear, I think he did the fan a favor because it was just seconds later that Randy Savage hits the ring. And could you imagine back in 1985, Randy Savage getting it on with this little fan here? But it is Macho Man and Lanny Poffo. They enter the ring, but instead of aiding the King, it becomes a 4-on-1 beatdown. All of them beating down Jerry Lawler with Tux Newman standing by, egging it all on. And it's going to end with the Macho Man coming off the top rope with that flying elbow drop onto the King before the Fabs finally show up to run off the heels.
And, you think Tux would have been preoccupied with looking for the Fabs back there somewhere instead of beating up the King, since that's his prime target. Well,
I was going to say, Stan Lane probably got in the ring and said, hey, I thought you were looking for us.
Is this your idea? You're going to get at us through beating up the King? Is that what you think you're going to do?
You're not fooling us. We know you're here for us.
We don't even like him.
Well, that's true. That's why they took
Steve does to his crown.
Well, that's also likely why they take so long to come out here. It's like, well, wait till he hits the elbow. I know he's going to hit an elbow. Then we'll run out. We'll be the heroes.
Steve Kern's like, shit, do we have to? Eddie Martin's like, go.
So if anybody was concerned about the Macho Man, will he, won't he, will he stay with Tux Newman? Obviously, the answer is yes. He even doubles down, puts an exclamation point on it here, attacking the King and dropping the elbow last week at the Coliseum. So obviously that's why Lawler, he wants it, the Macho Man, and he wants at him right now, right here on TV. As we come back to the studio, the King reiterating he's not wanting to wait for the Coliseum. He'll take on the Macho Man right here, right now. And then come the troops. Mike Sharp blasting the King, knocking him over, followed by Eddie Gilbert, Lanny Poffo, and last but certainly not least, Randy Savage himself, as Tux Newman tells Savage to take out the eyes. Pluck the eye out, Randy.
Jesus.
It's pretty violent, right?
For kids, Lord.
Saturday morning TV. Pluck the eye out.
The eye out? I mean,
I don't even think Bill Watts has ever used that term.
No. My goodness.
I mean, he might have done it a time or two, but I don't think he's ever used the term.
Well, that's Jerry Jarrett bringing back the old famous angle, as they would tell about years later.
Yeah, true that. Although I believe both of these eyes are real, right?
Yes, as far as I know.
Okay.
But, yeah, and so Lance was pretty perturbed about this. He
was. Yeah. So an upset Lance Russell shouting at Randy Savage, disgusted. Lawler was willing to give you a title shot, and you weren't even man enough to take it. So Lance Russell talking some shit on Randy Savage here as the heels are pulled away. Lawler lays there clutching at his eyes, so maybe he did pluck one out. Maybe he ate it. I don't know. But Lawler is down and out in the studio as Tux Newman says, we should all bow our heads because we have seen the last of the King. The King is dead.
Maybe you should pluck his balls since you don't seem to have any there, Randy.
Did somebody say pluck balls?
I don't think so there, Lanny. Settle down. But sometimes Memphis gets the storytelling right. And yeah, some of this is a little over the top. But, when you got Lawler with the belt, it should be Savage coming after him. But here they've managed to have Randy cost him. As we've established over the years, nothing means more to Jerry Lawler than winning that world title. It's everything to him. So now Randy has taken away his opportunity to win the AWA World title. And if that wasn't good enough, now he's come out here and tried to literally rip his freaking eye out of his head. So now you have a motivated Jerry Lawler, the champion, who's coming after the challenger and wants the match with the challenger more than the challenger wants the match with him. So that's worthy of buying a ticket, I suppose.
Well, we were supposed to get the Macho Man versus Jerry Lawler. Of course, we were told that it was changed to Randy Savage taking on Billy Travis, and that match is next. Believe it or not, guys. Macho Man going to attack Billy Joe, landing a sit-out clothesline, gorilla press into a drop, throat first across the top rope, but Savage just keeps pulling Travis up from the cover. And then we see, well, another one. He does it almost every time out here in the studio. Busts out another move I've never seen the Macho Man use. This week, Randy Savage going up for a superplex, and it connects. 1, 2, but Randy pulls him up again. Were you shocked when you saw the Macho Man go for the superplex?
I was, and that's the words that echoed through my head was, man, we keep talking about on the show how every week Macho's digging into this bag of tricks and pulling out moves we haven't seen him do. And I was thinking, I was like, unless Ray has seen something that I didn't, I've never seen Macho Man do a superplex. So this is pretty awesome. Yeah,
when I saw him trying to sit him up there, I'm like, there's no way he's going to, I mean, I know he's capable of doing it, but just another move we've never seen in that bag of tricks, but I can do everything. Clearly, the Macho Man with a superplex, he pulls Travis up again, delivers the patented knee drop, and again, pulling Billy Joe up for the 4th time in the match, and finally, referee Jerry Calhoun has enough, calling for the bell, disqualifying the Macho Man, just under 2 minutes.
Yeah, DQ, and so, it shows that Macho Man's out of control. He won't pin Billy Travis. He's trying to hurt him to the point the referee has to disqualify him. So I like that. It makes me wonder about all these new moves he's pulling out. Does he look at each one of these as an audition tape each week for Jimmy Hart to send him Vince and be like, look at this. He can do a superplex, baby. Look at these rolls he does, baby. He can do it all, baby.
It's kind of curious because, the story, when we get there of Randy Savage leaving to the WWF, Jimmy Hart is the one that makes the call, but he has to disguise why he's calling, the reason for calling Randy Savage. And Randy didn't really trust Jimmy either. He thought he was fooling him because, Mr. Paranoia, Randy Savage, he thought that Jimmy Hart was setting him up at the same time. And Jimmy's trying to help him get a job in the WWF. And we'll go into that further in length when we get to that point in the year. But it's kind of interesting. We could see that this being like a, look what I can do, At the same time, he didn't even know what Jimmy was doing, for his benefit.
Yeah, that's very true. I think Macho Man just wanted to go out there and just steal the show and let everybody leave there without any doubt in their mind that he's the most awesome thing they're going to see on any show he's on, and he's not considering that Vince McMahon could see it or anything else. He's just pulling out all the stops each week to steal the show, it seems.
Let's see, what have I not done yet? It kind of reminds me of the old Bruce Pritchard story about Bret Hart right after he won the WWF title. They let him beat Berserker and Skinner and Papa Shango and all these guys, and Bret goes to Bruce and company and he goes, all right, who am I beating next? And they're like, Bret, there's nobody left. Who do you want to beat? So, I haven't beat Virgil. And it's like, are you fucking serious? And then that's how that came about, that Bret Virgil match on like Superstars or whatever it was. So, and it's kind of like, what can I do next that I haven't done already?
Superplex, yeah.
Yeah, I like it. As post-match, though, we get the patented flying top rope elbow drop from Randy Savage for good measure. And Macho Man looking to do it a second time as we see Jerry Lawler coming from the locker room trying to return for revenge out here, but a whole slew of baby faces holding the king back, his eye bandaged up. Savage, though, climbing to the top rope and standing there with great balance, pointing down at Jerry Lawler, threatening to leap onto everyone. And had he done that, I would have just exploded. I would have lost my mind, and this would have been the greatest episode of all time. Unfortunately, Savage climbs back down, and Jerry Lawler's pulled away for the time being. And yeah, man, it was a wild little segment there, and a fun little segment for the Macho Man.
Oh yeah, put him over like a madman, and I can only imagine in my mind that underneath that bandage, that Lawler's eye was dangling out like Vader after Stan Hansen had just knocked out in Japan.
You know, you talked about it just a little bit here, how crazy Randy Savage was in this angle, in this segment. And Lance Russell, he uses like every line in the book you can to get over how nutty the Macho Man is. I knew how he was before, but he's even worse now. And then it happens, guys. That's insane! Lance Russell hits a high-pitched voice I have never heard. Even when he was angry at Jimmy Hart, he still sounded like an angry Lance Russell. But here this week, it was a vocal tone I have never heard in Lance Russell ever.
It just makes you wonder if somebody asked him, like, okay, Lance, we need you to really put an exclamation point on this. Like, we need your voice to go up an octave. Like, imagine Jimmy Hart doing the old Crazy Eddie commercial from back of this around that time. That's what we need. And he was like, all right, I see what I can do.
All right, well, we got all this craziness going on in the Memphis TV studio, so it's probably a good time they take a break. We're going to take a break right here, right now, as part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. We'll be back, guys, on the other side.
Hey everybody, Gene Jackson here, inviting you to check out the Retro Wrestling Review, where each week I'm joined by some great co-hosts who help me review classic episodes of USWA Championship Wrestling, and right now we are doing week-by-week reviews of 1993. But we don't just do reviews, sometimes we get a chance to interview some of the people who were there and lived it, plus do watch-alongs. It's a lot of fun, so check out new episodes that drop every Wednesday at WrestleCopia.com, and to find links to everything associated to the podcast, you can go to USWApodcast.com.
Hey guys, Ray Russell here, curator of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, inviting you guys to listen to many of the programs here as part of the WrestleCopia brand, including, but not limited to, the Wrestling Memory Grenade, currently covering the 1988 and the WWF project. You can also listen to the Regional Rasslin podcast, where we talk the territories, whether it's Jamie Ward with Georgia 81, Roman Gomez with the UWF in 1986, or Gene Jackson covering Memphis in 85. 3 projects going on right now over there at Regional Rasslin. You can also listen to the Wrestling Stoop with the legend himself, Bob Roop. Bob goes back in time each and every week, covering not just his career, but countless stories and interactions with hundreds of wrestling names spanning his 2 decades in the business. But that's not all. You can also check out the Pro Wrestling Academy with the professor of Pro Resu, Mr. Dan Ginnity. Dan and I go back in time and cover the history of Japanese professional wrestling in the English language. And you can listen to all of those shows and more, all part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, located over at WrestleCopia.com. That's WrestleCopia.com, and anywhere your podcast streaming needs are met, from Apple to Spotify, Pocket Cast, and beyond. And while you're at it, why not subscribe to our social media guys for all the latest goings on here at the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. Plus, I'm constantly adding old school video clips and pictures from throughout wrestling history. You can follow us over on X, formerly Twitter, at Rasslin Grenade. That's at RASSLIN Grenade. Also, follow and like me, Facebook.com/Rasslin Grenade. And why not subscribe to YouTube.com/Rasslin Grenade. And of course, now would be a fantastic time to become a WrestleCopia patron. I'm talking about that $5 all access tier over at Patreon.com/WrestleCopia. That address again, Patreon.com/WrestleCopia, where you get so many gifts for just $5, including all of my insanely detailed show notes for every episode of The Grenade Show, Regional Rasslin, and the Monday Warfare podcast. You'll also get early access to a lot of the podcasts here on the WrestleCopia brand, where you can listen days and sometimes as much as a week earlier than the rest of the listeners. We also offer remastered versions of the earliest episodes of The Grenade Show, covering the 1989 NWA project. Includes enhanced sound quality, plus new content and conversation never heard before. But that's still not all, guys. You also get at least a dozen digital downloads for your viewing and reading pleasure each and every month, plus random bonus video drops, and of course, the Patreon exclusive Watch Along series, covering many past WWF and WCW events. And if that's not all, videocasts, also now a part of Patreon. And for those who like all of their podcasts in one nice, neat little pile, the WrestleCopia Patreon also offers a Patreon exclusive Spotify account. You can actually go over to your Spotify with your WrestleCopia Patreon credentials Instead of listening or downloading directly from Patreon, you can go over to Spotify and listen to all the latest shows, including all of the early releases. And you get all of that and so much more for just $5. No subscription, cancel anytime. Give it a try for a month, guys. I think you'll like the content that I offer, and every penny of it goes right back here into paying the bills. So if you're looking to support that next up-and-coming podcast brand, please consider making it WrestleCopia. Help me pay some of the bills to keep the WrestleCopia podcast network and all of the great shows here up and running for the months and the years to come. All right, Gene, welcome back to the show, guys. And wow, what a wild way we left everyone. Randy Savage and Jerry Lawler trying to get at one another. And then we come back from commercial break and we see a raging Jerry Lawler return to the studio, demanding Randy Savage get back out here right now. Lawler even ripping the eye bandages off to show his injury. Probably wasn't a great idea to do that. But he wants revenge right now, he says, as Eddie Marlin out to try and calm the king down. He's in the ring. He's got some lumber, some plunder, if you will, baby. He's got a steel chair in the ring. To no avail, Randy Savage nowhere to be found. So the king, using the chair for protection against Tux and his boys, vowing revenge tomorrow at the Mid-South Coliseum. That's how you do it. And this is probably the most heated I've seen Lawler all year so far. And for good reason, a good story coming up. But yeah, going back to the beginning of this, ripping the eye bandage off, pointing to his eye like something terrible had happened to it. And at first I thought I saw something, but after the close-up, I'm like, why? Why is there a close-up of this? I didn't see much of anything.
Yeah, that was a bad call that we definitely need to keep the bandage on. But, man, you nailed it there. Like, this is the emotion that we've been missing from Jerry Lawler. You know, we've talked about it extensively on this show that, you know, there were some pretty big angles, at least from, you know, stipulations of matches that Lawler just really didn't sell. We didn't really think his heart was into it going into the, you know, Jimmy Hart's, you know, leaving town versus him leaving town. And even these world title matches with Bogwinkle. But this is the Lawler that I want to see. This is the Jerry Lawler that makes you believe, you know, that he's going to freaking be out for blood tomorrow at the Coliseum. And we already know Savage is crazy. So, man, we've got to get down there because when these two tie up, somebody's going to get killed. This is going to be wild. Let's go.
Yeah, great sell job and the use of the Savage segment, too.
Lawler that sells tickets right here. So
yeah, and I can't wait to see what they do number-wise in the Coliseum for this show. But using multiple segments here to get it over, Lawler is heated, he's angry, he wants it now. Again, I go back to, even if he had come up with something good for his eye, I would have saved it and left the people guessing how bad was it until he got to the Coliseum. But at the same time, I'm very curious what Jerry went backstage and did to try and draw some kind of red eye or whatever he was going for here. I don't really know, but I'm just curious what he went back there and did and thought. He was like, oh, this looks cool.
Yeah, they certainly didn't live up to. They didn't do it as good as the Carolinas when they hardly jacked their face up for their.
4 grown ass men, big men, right? And they still can't get an eyeball out of the socket of the king. I think it must be in there really good.
Yeah, when he did that, as I was watching, I'm like, yes, he's fired up. Oh, this is great. And then he pulled the bandages off. Like, oh no, put that back on.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
Damn it.
Yeah, but whoever in production told the cameraman to zoom in, boy, you should be fired.
Cameraman, don't zoom.
Fire him, pal.
But yeah, I felt like I was like, man, this feels like when Eddie Gilbert hit him with a car and he had to come walking out there and reveal he was okay. Like, oh, don't
stop calling the cops, guys.
Yeah. So maybe I don't know. Maybe somebody called the cops and said, "Hey, man, they're trying to rip people's eyes out down there." And he's like, "All right, let me go show them my eye still in the socket."
Well, we continue on, guys. Here we got tag team action. Steve Constance and Tim Ashley taking on Jerry Bryant and Mr. Wrestling. That's Tommy Gilbert under the hood for those who have missed the last couple episodes of the Memphis Regional Rasslin. I wrote, is that Jerry Bryant or Eddie Gilbert? I was really confused to start the match because Bryant's starting to grow his hair and even have that Eddie Gilbert dye color to it.
He did. I had to look twice because, I mean, as the match was going to the ring, you know, I was like, well, we've already seen Eddie tagging with Lanny. Now he's out here tagging with Tommy against Constance and Ashley. And I'm like, oh, no, it's Jerry Bryant. But you're exactly right. I mean, You could have Jerry Lawler and David Haskins against Jerry Bright and Eddie
Oh,
Gilbert.
my
It
God.
looked like Lawler and Gilbert were teaming with themselves.
Wow. Yeah. The babyface is going to control most of the way here, though, but the heels, they do get in some cheap shots, and it leads to a random four-way melee, which leads to a double disqualification. What was the point of this match? It goes 2.5 minutes.
Apparently, we had 2.5 minutes that we needed to kill, and it didn't have to be good. And so this is what we came up with.
They had a couple extra minutes after selling the upcoming softball games. All right, what do we got back there? All right, bring out the boys.
Yep. Oh,
And of
Constance
course-
and Ashley are almost, we talked about the Terminators regressing. It's almost like
Yeah.
they're the same way. Like they are getting worse, as if that is hardly possible. But
I
it seems
bitched
to
for
be
weeks. Why are they not on TV? And now that they are on TV, I'm not going to, say the cliche thing. Why? Take them back off. But now I see why. But at the same time, I guess maybe keep them off TV, and then people might not realize, that they're not very good in the ring. Especially, I believe it's Constance.
Yeah, he's definitely the worst of the two by far. But maybe on TV, let them score some quick wins. Maybe give them the old belly to belly Magnum TA finish. They
They have no business in the ring for even 2 minutes. It would seem at this point.
Absolutely not.
And then Lance and Dave trying to be polite here. They might be something in 2 or 3 more years.
That was a note that I had in my head. Lance said on a number of occasions, just in this 2-minute match, that they're getting better. They're showing improvement to the point that it almost felt like somebody fed that to him, like Lance, put over that they're getting better, even if they're not. Because he said it numerous times. I'm like, okay, Lance,
I think that was the entire conversation. Yeah.
You saying that over and over just draws more attention to the fact that, you're killing your credibility, man, because they're not getting better. They're getting worse. Stop saying it.
They're not going to be world champions tomorrow, but maybe in 2 or 3 years.
But maybe if the whole roster quits, there may be a chance.
Well, they're better than the Terminators. Well, I'll give them that.
Coming to the ring, Constance and Ashley. Well, they're not the Terminators. That's going to be their new tag team name.
Well, we roll on with more TV here, and we got more tag team action. Is that the Wild Hoggs out here taking on Brad and Mark Batten? But the Hoggs now seemingly have wrestling gear, ring jackets, wrestling boots, long tights. No explanation of this character change. I would say that they used their first paychecks to buy some gear, but it's Memphis, so I know better. Maybe they took a year's advance. I don't know.
Here's the thing. Lord knows I'm not advocating for Tux Newman managing any more people than he already is, and we've already committed to putting him with the PYTs. But would it not have made sense, like if they just showed up to the studio that day, like, hey, look, we got gear and ring jackets and stuff, and they're like, well, all right, or we're going to send you out there with Tux, and we'll say that, Tux is from Hollywood, and he took you guys out shopping and got you some real wrestling gear, and he's turning y'all into a real wrestling team. And at least that would have been a story. It would have played into Tux's gimmick. But just know, they just come out here looking like a completely different tag team than the one we saw previously, with no explanation whatsoever. That's fine. They look better. I don't know. The hillbilly gimmick with that name or whatever just didn't sit well with me, but that name with the new look doesn't sit well either, so I don't know.
No, I totally agree with you in regards to the whole name thing and their look and whatnot, but it does make them more credible. If you're just watching them on TV, like, you can take them a little more seriously now. Like I said, how much they surprised me as workers in that gear, coming out there and actually having a decent heel squash match last time out. Again, they surprised me again this week. Another really good match for what it was. Lance even points it out here. For 2 big brawler-looking guys, the Hoggs can actually work. They're pretty decent.
That was the thing that stood out. Usually anytime you see 2 guys walk out in a pair of overalls, you're like, all right, well, these guys can't work. So their work in the ring, and I think you even talked about that last time, the work didn't really match the gimmick or the look. So they're dressing the part to me. To me, though, they look like if the Blonde Bombers had been on a freaking binge since the last time we saw them in Memphis in like 79 or whatever it was. If they had just been in a bar somewhere for the last 6 years and they staggered back into the ring, that's what the Wild Hoggs looks like if they completely let themselves go.
For a split second, the first time they appeared on TV, I was like, is that Larry Latham? I don't remember him being here in this time. I go, oh, okay, no. Yeah, it like threw me off for like 1 second, literally, when the first time I saw them appear on the screen. But yeah, the Wild Hoggs going to dominate this one and look solid throughout here. Finally, though, a hot tag out to Mark Batten, who lands some drop kicks, but runs into a double sit-out clothesline. And the Hoggs going to score the win. Match goes 3 minutes and 34 seconds, so they're getting wins on TV.
The poor Battens, yeah. I just don't know what the issue is. Somebody in the booking staff has an issue with the Battens because they can't catch a break.
Yeah, and it's not even like normal dislike, right? Where you're like, I don't like that guy, I'm not booking him. Instead, it's like, I am going to book those guys every week on TV and job them to everyone in sight.
Yes. And we're going to try to do something with Constance and Ashley, who are hopeless. But then the Battens over here who can work, we're just going to let them just lose to everybody until they have no value whatsoever.
I think we're already there after that like 4-month feud with Plowboy Frazier. But we continue on. We don't see this every week. Exotic Adrian Street in the studio. Quick promo here with Miss Linda by his side. Talks the trashy people of the Memphis territory, spitting and swearing, chewing tobacco, drinking beer and whiskey, and some of the men are just as bad. Even Lance Russell catches the joke.
I liked it. That was
some of the men. I get it. Ha, 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 Adrian.
I was happy to see Adrian back in the studio this week.
Always good to have him here. Great talent to have on your roster. Just wish they would do more with him. As we go off to a VTR of a matchup involving Coco Ware taking on who Lance refers to as Tony Hart. He was actually Jack Hart in this matchup, but it is actually Barry Horowitz, the future Barry Horowitz. Coco Beware taking on Jack Hart, and he's accompanied to the ring for this match by his partner Norvell Austin and his manager in Florida, Percy Pringle, the future Paul Bearer, and it is the Brainbuster, the Ghostbuster in the WWF, going to score the win here. Boy, Horowitz is going to take those forever. Even takes it in the pile driver video.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. They can both do oh, yes pretty well. I guess they couldn't afford Percy Pringle, huh? So we get Tux Newman.
I imagine Percy was like, no, I'm not going to Memphis. I've heard. I'm good. I'll stick down here. You guys go do that for a few weeks. I'll see you when you get back.
Well, we heard from him just a moment ago. We come back to the studio, and it is Adrian Street with Miss Linda taking on another brand new wrestler, Tim Speedy Tall Tree, or as, everybody gets his name wrong here. Dave Brown just refers to him as Tall Tree. That was his name, is in the introduction by Dave Brown. And then Lance Russell refers to him as Speedy Tall Trees. So neither one of them actually get it right, but it is what it is. And Tall Tree, apparently a modern day 80s hippie here with jeans with fringes going down the sides of them, boots, cowboy boots of some type up to his knees. And he's built from California. In reality, he is the Booker's son, I do believe.
Yeah, that would be the only explanation I could come up with why he's here. I think I remember texting you as I was sitting at work watching this show and going, I was excited to see Adrian back in the studio until I saw who he was wrestling.
Yeah, that was a little bit unfortunate there, huh? But it is good to see Adrian back here taking on Speedy Tall Tree, guys, as Lance Russell just marveling at the artistry of Adrian Street's face paint. Lance can't say enough about it this week again.
He gets so distracted by Adrian's face paint. I find that amusing that I'm starting to realize more and more that Lance and Dave's forte may not be people's names, it seems. I don't remember them screwing names up as much as we've seen recently. And that they both, but Lance especially, is just quite taken with Adrian's face paint.
He certainly is. So we don't get to see him every week, so it's what's old is new again to Lance Russell, and he loves the artistry of Adrian Street. And I thought to myself, now I know Adrian probably did paint most of his own face, but what makes you think that Miss Linda can't do that, Lance? Shame on you.
It's true. That's true. The word artistry with somebody's face paint is funny to me.
It was great. It was great, yeah. Lance was really putting it over like it was like fucking the next coming of like Picasso or some shit. I don't know. But the bell sounds, and here we go, Davey. Speedy holding his own early on until Miss Linda going to trip him up from the outside. Street quickly capitalizing with a splash, and he scores the win in this nothing match. It goes 1 minute and 17 seconds. Not a lot going on here.
So they, even though he's the Booker's son, they knew not to let his match go.
You're not going over
the Constance and Ashley match.
Well, he's going to protect his son. You can't work. Well, you're not even going to go over.
You're not going to go over, and we're going to keep it short because Adrian is going to tie you. If we give him 4 minutes, Adrian's going to turn you inside out.
You're going to piss him off, and then he's really going to stretch you.
Exactly.
Well, I guess we have this match for a reason, guys, because post-match, Tall Tree jumping on top of Adrian Street looking for a little revenge as he was screwed out of that match, but Miss Linda clubbing him from behind with something, and it allows Adrian Street to get back on top, and then Miss Linda going to pull off her boot and going to wallop Speedy with it, but out of the blue, it's Sweater Puppies McGee. No, that's Debbie Combs in street clothes. Debbie Combs out here attacking Miss Linda. I wrote, that was random. And we have our very first cat fight of 1985.
Yes, that was very unexpected. You talk about coming out of nowhere.
Literally.
It seemed like this was just just a quick squash that's over and done. Then all of a sudden, like, what is this idiot jumping on the street for? And then it's like, all right, Linda's going to shut this shit down. And then all of a sudden, Debbie Combs is out there like, whoa, what's going on?
Yeah, well, Lance, you talked about how over and over during the Constance and Ashley match, you kept mentioning that they'll be good someday, right? Well, here he has to mention at least 4 or 5 times in like a 2-minute period that, Miss Linda was going to try to gouge out his eyeball with her shoe. And I'm like, where did you come up with that? But he just says it over and over like it's factual. But as he claims Debbie Combs came with Tall Tree. In fact, that's her boyfriend, says Lance Russell. I bet nobody told Debbie about that. But we have ourselves a pull-apart here as men leave the locker room in dozens. Much quicker pace than they did to help the king, I'll tell you that. I count at least 8 guys out here as they both like to grab hold of the ladies and pull them apart.
Yeah, I noticed there's no shortage of people for that pull apart, if you will. I feel like Tall Tree's like, Lance, I'll give you $20 if you'll tell everybody that's my girlfriend. Like, all right.
I'll give you another pack of cigarettes.
Oh, stuff.
So we go into a commercial break, the pull apart brawl, the crazy wild cat fight between the 2 ladies, just out of nowhere, random at the end of the show. And when we come back, Eddie Marlin comes out. He says he's had enough. Everybody trying to take over the show. Jerry Lawler tried to do it earlier. Tux Newman with his nonsense, and now the ladies here. And so Marlin, he books the ladies for the Coliseum with no referee, and it'll all go down after the matches. He says he's going to open the doors, and anyone who wants to come in and watch may do so. I wrote, wow, that's asking for it.
That's so weird. That was such a bizarre thing to
randomly say.
After the show, we're going to let them fight with no referee, and just anybody who wants to come watch can come watch. I mean, I've heard of lights out matches and all that kind of crap, but this was just a different presentation for sure.
Yeah, I don't know what was going on with any of that. And then Lance Russell, man, he came Mr. Perv this week. He marks out, all right, that's my kind of promoter. Can't fight, no referee.
I'm going to need a pillow in my lap for that match.
Even makes a joke about how him and Dave Brown should apply for a referee's license or something like that.
Yeah, that was another side of Lance that I was like, come on, man. We don't need to hear our grandpa talking like that. Jeez, Lance.
And that cat fight actually wraps up this edition of Championship Wrestling, believe it or not, guys. No standby match this week. We get something a little different.
Yeah, what a way to end the show on a high note. It certainly... I hope it left everybody as excited as it left Lance. So, I found it funny, though. I wonder
who needs Viagra?
If Lawler had something to say about the fact, like, Lance, we just did a whole angle of these guys trying to take my eye out. Now you're trying to tell everybody that the female valet was trying to take the eye of the jobber out. Like, damn it. We got enough eye angles going on, Lance.
Oh, man. I love it. So TV concludes, and that means it's off to the house shows, Gene. Did somebody say fundraiser? March 16th, later in the day, Saturday, Lexington, Tennessee at the high school. 5 matches on the card, including Jerry Lawler, Constance and Ashley, Tojo Yamamoto, Gilbert and his army. I don't know about that. And somebody by the name of Tim Shackelford. What do you know about Tim Shackelford?
Well, I know my dad used to be in a bass fishing club when I was in grade school, and he had fished with a guy named Joe Shackelford, so I don't know, maybe they were related or something, but I didn't know there was a Shackelford in professional wrestling. But if we were having a school fundraiser in Lexington at the high school, I certainly hope we brought some barbed wire.
Well, I did some digging, and I Googled Mr. Tim Shackelford. Come to find out, there are a lot of Shacklefords, specifically in Kentucky, but a little in Tennessee as well. A lot of them named Timothy. So I couldn't pinpoint exactly what happened to Mr. Shackelford prior to or after this quote unquote run in professional wrestling. I was assuming he was the janitor at the high school, and they loved him, so they were giving him some work here. I don't know. Yeah, let's just say
Tim Shackelford.
Let's just say
the main event. Most
of the Tim Shacklefords that I came across, I'm not going to repeat their life here on the show. So
I feel like this is going to be one of those instances where next week there's going to be an update from Steve Crawford that Tim Shackelford had a match in BFE, Kentucky in 1984, and then this show in Lexington in 85 that he was never heard from again.
Well, if this Tim Shackelford is the father of Tim Shackelford Jr., who is now a child predator, well, I hope that's not the case. I'm just saying.
Oh, Lord help us.
Also on March the 16th, Nashville, Tennessee, it's the Fabulous Ones taking on the Wild Hoggs. Randy Savage versus Adrian Street, Texas Death Match. All right. Mike Sharp and Angel taking on the Battens. Lanny Poffo versus Branch. That would have been Tom Branch, right? So that's the other son, I do believe, of Ernesto, yeah. And then Jerry Oski, if he ever arrives, and he will, taking on Jet Star, who we have not seen here. So I'm wondering if he ever actually shows up for these other house shows.
I'm curious. Could that angel be the French angel Frank Morel?
That would have been my guess. But then Tim Shackelford's here, so who knows?
maybe Tim Shackelford dons a mask as an angel to take you off the trail of what.
Yeah, maybe Morel's hanging out at Jarrett's palatial estate or whatever he was living at this point.
You just never know with Memphis, because it could have been Morel. It could have been any random jobber with a mask thrown on. Who knows?
As we roll on here, Jerry Lawler Show, Sunday, March the 17th. But spoiler alert, guys, we're going to break the fourth wall here. It's actually recorded the day prior, believe it or not, Gene. In fact, it was recorded before Memphis Studio Rasslin went live. So this is really weird because we kick off the Lawler Show with Lance and Dave and a bandaged-eyed Jerry the King Lawler explaining that while this intro was taped after the wrestling program yesterday, the remainder of the show was recorded prior to the wrestling show that happened yesterday. And that they're explaining that's why Jerry Lawler's eye will not be bandaged up for the Lawler Show.
I mean, I appreciate the effort here. I just
at least they put some thought into it, right?
Yeah, but I still picture like heads exploding all over Memphis. Like,
what, huh?
This happened before, but we're seeing it after. What the hell is he talking about? You know, it's like, I mean, kudos for making it make sense, but I don't know. You probably could have just went on about it, and I don't know if it really would have registered with half these folks in Memphis, but maybe I'm not giving them enough credit. Yeah,
so the King explaining why he will appear injury-free for the remainder of the episode here, but again, also why he has an eye bandaged here for the intro was because, well, we recorded the intro after the rest of the program, so it is what it is, and they tried. As the episode begins, we get a Tux Newman interview via the video screen from quote-unquote Studio B, probably right behind the King. He says last week, Tux got a minute of time apparently out here on the show. So he was invited back here this week as Lawler wants to talk Newman's interference in his match for the AWA title against Nick Bockwinkel. And they replay that clip of Newman aiding Bockwinkel in defeating the King and retaining the AWA title, i.e. to give it back to Rick Martel. More Andy Kaufman talk this week as well. Tux says he was Andy's real agent. He only sent George Shapiro to handle the Memphis Rasslin business. Newman even has Andy's sunglasses. holding up a pair of sunglasses that read Andy on the side.
Well, if you were doubting any of this, Ray, there you go. I mean, there's your proof. That would hold up in court right there.
Well, then all of it comes out. We learn the real reason that Tux Newman is here in Memphis. The real reason he wants revenge on the king. He says that Jerry Lawler killed Andy Kaufman right before a big movie deal, and it cost Newman a lot of money. So now he's here for revenge. I wrote, wow, this story evolves or devolves a little more every week, Gene. Lawler is not impressed. He says, hey, Andy died of cancer, to which Newman replies, cancer you gave him from your illegal pile driver. It started in his brain and spread all over his body.
How does he say this stuff with a straight face? I know this is wrestling and it's all silly, but oh my God. Although I must say, this justifies that, disqualification for pile drivers rule in Memphis or in Tennessee in general, because, if it's out here giving people cancer, I mean, that's definitely a health risk that's just not worth taking. So
that's technically attempted murder every time.
Being the only state to
ban the pile driver.
Everybody.
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
think how many people Paul Orndorff and Terry Funk killed in their careers.
Yeah, so many. My goodness. Yeah, so, the king, too, he didn't really abide by that rule. Think about every time they waived the rule, right? So that's like Eddie Marlin and company saying, yeah, we don't care if you give that guy cancer. Go on out there and get it done.
Yep.
But you're right. Some of the comments made here back and forth, and mostly from Tux Newman, to me, it was like a comedy version. Like,
yeah, it is. But yeah, you're exactly right. Like, there's a certain amount of things that we're willing to turn our brain off to when it comes to wrestling. But this shit was like borderline parody. Like, it's so over the top, it's just silly. And it's like, well, Lawler couldn't even get mad about this because it's just so absurd that, why would you even dignify it with a response? But yeah, it's exactly what you called it. It's just so over the top. You can't get heat because it's just too silly.
So Tux promising that in a matter of hours, remember this was recorded prior to the studio wrestling yesterday. So Tux promising the king that in a matter of hours, he will see how superior Newman is to Jerry Lawler, giving him a fair warning here. So kind of interesting. And then, of course, as all guests do, Newman going to receive some gift certificates here, but not to TGI Fridays, which is probably why he ripped them up.
Well, yeah, that's an insult. I mean, we've seen the Dirty White Boys and the Fabulous Ones and countless others get these coveted TGI Fridays gift certificates, and now this big star like Tux Newman, who I'm sure wouldn't have belittled himself to be seen at TGI Fridays, but still it's insulting to not receive one. So
more comedy ensues after that, because he's also gifted a shirt from somewhere in that Overton Square or something like that, and it's it's St. Patrick's Day time, guys, March 17th, and thus, what does Lawler give him? A Patty shirt, kind of like Irish, right? Or something like, I don't remember what it said on it, but it was a St. Patrick's Day type t-shirt, to which Newman takes it and shines his shoes with it. And then the comedy here, as he says, I have a pair of $125 shoes. And Lawler busts out laughing. What brand was that? Because he clearly purposely flubbed it because he wasn't going to say a name.
You're right. Oh, yeah.
So
I'm wondering how far into this where Lawler realized, like, this is going
not
nowhere.
The guy.
Like, we've got to get this Tux Newman character out of here sooner rather than
later. Yeah, you have to wonder. Well, Lawler's not booking, but he has some say. He has some money in the pot here for the territory, and I totally agree, because if this is the best he's got, this ain't it. And I'm with you as far as, not only am I not impressed, I'm not calling him awful. Certainly a leaps and bounds better than J.R. Hart. But at the same time, it just ain't doing it. It ain't getting it done for me.
But, everything with Savage, and Savage says some over-the-top things, don't get me wrong, but everything with Savage makes you believe he's crazy, makes you believe he's dangerous.
Wonder why.
Tux Newman is the polar opposite of that. Like, putting them two together is like just pulling in two separate directions at the same time.
You can't control the Macho Man. Oh, man. We go on. Viewer mail segment. Carrie Folks of West Memphis, Arkansas. Don't worry, I did not look her up. What was Constance and Ashley's toughest match, she wants to know. She's got to be a little crazy, too, asking them that question. We go to a VTR. Thank God they're not in studio. Constance and Ashley responding. Their toughest match was the Loser Leaves Town match that they lost to the Nightmares. And that's pretty much it for the viewer mail segment. Kerry going to get a t-shirt and Lawler going to shill his book.
Because then we had to wear those masks, and we had to find somebody that knew how to tie them for us when we went to the ring every time. It was a bitch.
Could you see them having the Nightmares tying the mask? This is how we do it. Right before they go out to wrestle him every day.
Yep. I mean, you have a chance to ask somebody a question, and well, I always ask Constance and Ashley what their toughest match was. It makes me think those things were all work.
They didn't even have to get to the question. The minute he said Constance and Ashley, I just tuned out. I was like, ugh. That's why I didn't even want to Google Miss Carrie Folks. Hope she's doing okay. The next segment I wrote, wow, I did not see this coming. Very random, but very cool for me and the King anyway. He says the best college quarterback in the nation, the national championship winning team of Miami back in 1983, the quarterback, I'm talking about number 19, guys, Bernie Kosar, offers to leave college early, only if he can play for the Cleveland Browns. And that he does. As we actually hear a little brief interview here from Bernie Kosar, which was kind of cool. As a classic King, though, getting his sports teams over here in Memphis, he refers to the Browns as the number one NFL team in Memphis and says it was based on a poll from the year before. Lawler probably ran that poll, I'm sure.
I love how Lawler always is so shamelessly put over his favorite teams on his, Memphis TV program. Because, I mean, really, do you think the Cleveland Browns was the most popular team in Memphis? I mean, maybe, but can't imagine that being the case. But Lawler didn't give a shit because it was his favorite team, so that's all that mattered.
So Lawler also on this program putting over Coco Beware, coming back to Memphis. But he's not coming alone, but I love this whole time. Lawler's only selling Coco's return, really. He's not even mentioning Norville Austin. We get a replay of that Coco-Barry Horowitz match from Florida. We also see a Dutch Mantel music video. And as we close the show, Lawler promises that Mark and Jay Youngblood will be in the territory within weeks.
Okay.
It's very interesting just catching those little things like that, right? That, without actually doing what we're doing here, we probably never would have noticed that.
No, absolutely not. It's like expect him to go, well, we weren't able to land the British Bulldogs, but we're trying to get Mark and Jay Youngblood. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I know at least one of them will pop up here eventually as we continue on. Hey, remember Special Sunday, starting time, 4 p.m., Mid-South Coliseum, Memphis, Tennessee. Kids 10 and under, only $1 to enter. Amazing. And that's going to draw, reportedly, 10,000 fans.
Wow. I mean, that's pretty amazing to see that here, not to turn this into a plug for my other podcast, but, doing the USWA podcast in 1993 Memphis, and we're struggling to put 1,000 people in the Coliseum with wrestlers from the WWF coming to town. And here we got 10,000, on a Sunday show with Macho and Lawler. That's a big match, but still, that's a lot of people.
Huge match, huge. But looking at the rest of the card, not really impressed to be drawing the crowd. But let's see what we got here, guys. Kicks off Jerry Oski, finally arrives, scores a win over Jerry Bryant in the opener. Also Constance and Ashley over the Wild Hoggs. Adrian Street teaming with Mr. Wrestling, Tommy Gilbert, over the Batten Twins. Was there ever any doubt they lost to the fucking Hogs? Also, it's Dutch Mantel defeating Iron Mike Sharp. Writings on the wall, Mike. Fabulous one. Southern Tag Team Champions going to a no contest with Eddie Gilbert and Lanny Poffo. Really?
Wow, that's surprising.
Now, I presume this match happened at the end of the show as promised, but I have here my results that Debbie Combs battles Miss Linda to a no contest. And would you expect anything else? There was no referee.
Yeah. Let's be sure we get at least 2 no contests in there.
Yeah. But we do get a pinfall victory here in the main event, though. It is the Macho Man Randy Savage scoring a win, defeating Jerry the King Lawler, and capturing the Southern Heavyweight title. So finally, the title changes hands, and it goes to the Macho Man who's deserved it for so long. It's good to see Randy Savage get the belt and playing the heel right where he belongs. If only he didn't have Tux Newman in his corner, everything would be perfect right now. But I love it. The Macho Man wins the title, goes over the King, and hopefully we see footage of this in the weeks to come.
Man, you talking about changes happening quickly. Here just 3 or 4 weeks ago, we're talking about like how Macho Man's not on TV, and they're not using him. He's just the fill-in for Lawler in the towns that Lawler doesn't want to come to, and that seems to be his only purpose. And boom, here he is. He's heel. He's beating Lawler in the main event. Now we've got something to look forward to.
Yeah, very cool. Unfortunately, the other towns are going to have to wait another week or two to see this, but it is what it is right now. Randy Savage is the Southern Heavyweight Champion, at least in the city of Memphis. As we roll on, guys, to March the 19th in Lewisport, Kentucky at the Hancock County High School. Don't have any results for that, believe it or not. So we'll continue on. Also,
okay. I got to stop right there. I'm sorry, but I always seem to have some kind of tie into one of these freaking house shows. So
you love these fundraisers.
Several years ago, I worked for a company that moved me to be trained in Owensboro, Kentucky.
Yeah.
They told me I'd only be there for a few months. They said don't sign a lease. So the only apartment I could find for me and my wife to live in that didn't require a lease was 18 miles out of Owensboro in a little town called Lewisport, Kentucky. That was literally just a bump in the freaking road. Yeah, there's a high school, a Subway, a Dollar General, and a gas station. They told me I'd only be there a couple of months, don't sign a lease, ended up being there 9 months.
Oh, my God.
Bedroom apartment with me, her, and our cat. Longest 9 months of our life. But seeing that result, I was like, man, why did they bring some wrestling to Lewisport when we were there bored on the weekend?
Maybe they damaged the school. You know how that works. Also, March the 19th, the A-Team, I would imagine, worked Louisville at the Louisville Gardens. J.R. Hogg over Tojo. Jerry Oski defeating Harley Hogg. It's Mr. Wrestling over Speedy Tall Tree. No Speedy Tall Tree in Lewisport, unfortunately. Constance and Ashley defeating Stan Frazier and Jerry Bryant. Dutch Mantell over Adrian Street. And Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert basically playing the part of Nick Bockwinkel here in Louisville a week later in the Texas Death Match. It's Gilbert scoring the win over the King Jerry Lawler. You have to imagine that the finish was likely similar to the Bockwinkel finish.
Yeah, I would assume so that we're ready for Savage and Lawler down the line. But
and you look at this.
Still kind of surprising at this point, though, to see Eddie going over on Lawler, but it makes sense.
He's kind of the fill-in guy for Randy Savage, Nick Bockwinkel, whatever the case may be here, because you notice who is MIA from the Louisville Gardens, and that is Randy Savage. So no doubt it was the Angelo Poffo crew who filled in there in Lewisport. I'm thinking Randy, Lanny, Angelo probably did a match.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they had Frazier drop the elbow off the top rope, perhaps.
Wow. We go on. March 20th, Wednesday, Evansville, Indiana, of course. It's Lawler and Dutch Mantell versus Eddie Gilbert and Mike Sharp. Constance versus J.R. Hogg. Ashley versus Harley Hogg. It's Speedy Tall Tree versus Mr. Wrestling. Tojo teaming with Haskins again, taking on Bryant this time, teaming with Stan Frazier. So that's your card in Evansville. No results, unfortunately, guys. So we move on to Thursday, March the 21st in Ferdinand, Indiana, and Owensboro. You were talking about that. Kentucky.
There we go.
Yeah. No matches, no results, but I'm assuming fundraisers?
Most likely. So, man, I would have been able to see Memphis Wrestling in Lewisport and then called it over in Owensboro a couple days later. So,
hopefully it was the different crew. I'm hoping.
Yeah, that would have sucked to get to see the same card again.
So we go on one more day of wrestling here. Double fundraiser once again, March the 22nd, Friday, West Memphis, Arkansas at the junior high school, sponsored by the school food service. On the card, it's Lawler and Mantell, Constance and Ashley, Savage and Lanny Poffo, and tickets are on sale. Where else, Gene? But I love this. This is my favorite thing of all time. Tickets on sale for this event in the lunchroom.
Well, yeah, if you're sponsored by the school food services, where else would you get them? But right there in the lunchroom in West Memphis, Arkansas, hometown of Big Sid Vicious.
When Lance and Dave were running down these towns and they said tickets available in all of the lunchrooms, I'm like, how many lunchrooms does this junior high school have in West Memphis, Arkansas?
Well, that's fun.
But also Friday, another fundraiser of sorts, Dresden, Tennessee at the high school. This one, though, is sponsored by the Booster Club, so nothing fun here. It's the Battens, Stan Frazier in a $5,000 slam contest. Bet that was legit. And the main event saw the Fabulous Ones taking on Mike Sharp and Eddie Gilbert.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Dresden's another town I've been to, and it's not very big, but hopefully people came out to see the Fabs and take a shot at slamming Stan Frazier.
I would have done that. Well, I don't know. What you got to pay $5 to get into that gimmick? I don't really know.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure there was
line them up
catch there somewhere.
Line up the marks. Let's get going. But yeah, that's going to wrap it up here this week, guys. I do apologize for my voice. Unfortunately, it's been gone for a couple of days now, and I was trying to get things done. We got to get things out of the way. What is that old saying? Neither rain nor sleet well, that's actually Jamie Ward. Never mind. But hey, man, we got to get things done here, and I appreciate you taking the time out and doing it for me, man. And another week of Memphis Wrestling in the books. Curious to see where we go from here with the Macho Man.
Macho Man is the champ, so I'm excited. We'll see how things progress with old Tux. The Hoggs have found a new look, but then they turn around and lose to Constance and Ashley at the Coliseum. So I don't know what that means for the future. Nothing good, I'm sure.
Well, at least the Terminators have been eliminated from the tag team scene, so we got that much going for us.
Things move fast in Memphis.
They
were a focal point, and now all of a sudden the Terminators are gone, the interns are gone, Troy Graham's gone. A lot of moving parts, as they like to say. The Eddie Gilbert army is no longer in existence, but Eddie's still here, and his dad's still here, and Lanny's a heel now, so a lot of interesting stuff going on.
Stuff. Lots of moving parts here in Memphis. It's a very complicated situation, and we keep you abreast of it each and every time out here as we try to keep up with it as well. And again, don't fall in love with any gimmick, any wrestler here in Memphis, Tennessee, unless it's Jerry Lawler. He's the only one guaranteed to stay. So, but that's going to do it here this week, Gene. We're going to wrap up this week of Memphis Wrestling in 1985. But before we go, why don't you tell them about your Memphis Wrestling in 1993?
Yeah, so if you want to jump ahead to see how Memphis Wrestling had evolved in 1993, you can join us every Wednesday here at WrestleCopia for the Retro Wrestling Review podcast, our USWA podcast. Right now we are in February of 1993. We've had Lex Luger has come to town, and we've seen Doink, and we've seen quite a few Mr. Perfect and Howard Finkel and different people come in. And so coming up, we just had a interview with Wolfie D where we talked about the origins of PG-13. Had a lot of fun talking to Wolfie. And now my regular co-hosts, Josh and Richard, are back. And we are getting ready to see Lex Luger back in the studio as they set up for a tag team match of Lex Luger and Brian Christopher taking on the King and Jeff Jarrett. So that should be interesting, to say the least.
Oh, for sure. I'm looking forward to all of the great talent that continues to come through here and all the great stories that continue on. And everybody out there, I'm sure they're waiting with bated breath for the heel Vince McMahon to arrive in the USWA. But in the meantime, man, it's just a great show each and every time out. I did the Doink the Clown episode with you, but since then, the narcissist Lex Luger, as you said, has arrived in Memphis, Tennessee, which is really cool because he was just a month into his character working for the WWF by this point. So it was very early on Narcissist to see him in the Memphis studio. And of course, you did the interview with Wolfie D, and you guys just continue on and on. Really get great stuff over there. The Retro Wrestling Review, guys, drops every Wednesday, not just in audio form here in the podcast, which I do recommend, but also I highly recommend later on, and whatever time you have free to sit down and watch video. There's a video version. Not only am I listening to it when I'm driving or I'm cooking or whatever I'm doing, then I can go back and it's like a new show, even though you guys are saying the same things, because now there's context with it. I can see the video footage and it's really cool. And it brings back memories for me when I did the 93 on the grenades. So just really cool stuff. I recommend everybody check out both the podcast and the video on youtube.com/wrestling grenade.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It definitely does add another element to it. We do have quite a few clips with every episode, all the main, angles and the main interviews and clips from the matches and everything. So yeah, definitely check out the video of it. We'd appreciate it. And
I've got some more fun stuff up my sleeve we're going to be talking about here soon. That should, if you're a fan of Memphis wrestling, and if you're listening to this, you certainly are. That I think people will enjoy, and it's out there already. If you want to go look at my Facebook,
go ahead real quick. Let them know. I mean, it's the cat's out of the bag. Go ahead.
Oh, well, I'm starting another weekly podcast where I'll be doing a podcast each week with Dangerous Doug Gilbert. It's going to be called Dangerous Conversations with Doug Gilbert. And we're going to be talking to Doug about, not only his career, but we talk about his father, Tommy Gilbert, and his brother, Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert, that we talk about here. And a lot of Doug's buddies in wrestling are going to be dropping in and being on the show with us. And I'm really excited about it. Doug's excited about it. I've had a lot of conversations with him recently. I got to hang out with him in Jonesboro at that Legends of Memphis Fan Fest. And we've been talking on the phone quite a bit. And he's really excited to share these stories. And a lot of people have been messaging me and showing interest in it. So I think it's going to be fun. I think it's going to be a great addition to WrestleCopia, and I hope everybody checks it out.
Yeah, I think it's going to be absolutely awesome because not only is, Doug going to be on the show, but from time to time, he's got a lot of friends in the wrestling business that he's traveled up and down the roads with. That can't wait to see who pops on the show alongside you guys. But also think about all the stories Doug has to tell, not just in Memphis, but everywhere he's ever worked, but also Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert, his brother, and his father, Tommy Gilbert. So his, second generation star is Doug Gilbert. So he's got his father's stories to tell as well. And all of the old timers, if you will, that hung around in Tommy's era that probably came around the house or, every once in a while he ran into and heard stories from them and he saw things. So it's going to be very cool. Many decades of stories to be had there from Dangerous Doug Gilbert. Looking forward to that show.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, he'll have a lot of great insight, as from both the fan perspective and from being in the business, like you said, from being around it his entire life. And, we, lost Eddie Gilbert way too soon. So there's a lot of stories and things that Eddie did that we don't have a lot of background on and a lot of insight. So Doug will be able to provide us with some of that. So if you have a question about Doug Gilbert, Eddie Gilbert, Tommy, or anything that he might know about or was involved with, you can send those questions to DougGilbertPodcast@outlook.com email, and I will make sure those make it onto the show, and we'll get Doug to talk about it.
Awesome. Love it. You heard it, guys. Dangerous Conversations with Doug Gilbert, and Gene Jackson going to be hosting that show alongside Doug to make sure you guys get your questions answered. Looking forward to that, Gene. Appreciate everything that you've done here since joining the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. We love having you. Love having you here on the Regional Rasslin show, though. Most of all, I'm selfish. Matriculating our way down that 1985 field of Memphis wrestling, and I'm looking forward to doing this again really soon, guys. Just a quick reminder before we go: Patreon.com/WrestleCopia, guys. I know we promote it often, but it's what pays the bills. It literally keeps us afloat here. We don't have advertisements during our shows, at least not anything we're making money for. So we highly encourage you guys to go check it out because, again, not only does it pay the bills, but we give you so many gifts for that $5 or even that Super Fan Deluxe tier for a couple dollars more. So check those out. More video casts coming very soon. WrestleFest 1988, going to be a fun one. I think Gene going to join me for that one, but I've got some other things lined up as well. And Dan Ginnity getting primed and ready for some really fun Japanese video casts.
Oh, man, I'm so excited. I'm really looking forward to those. Enjoying that podcast each and every week. All the great podcasts at WrestleCopia. But, as I've told you in the past, and as I told you, privately when the whole concept of that first came up, if there's any aspect of wrestling I'm just really ignorant about and don't know a lot about, it's Japanese wrestling. And, man, it's been so interesting to see the origins of it so far and knowing what's ahead. And admittedly, and I mean, this may sound worse than I intend for it to, but I've always had a hard time watching Japanese wrestling and a lot of different foreign types of wrestling just because I get frustrated. I don't speak Japanese. I don't know if you do, but so it's kind of hard sometimes to follow the story and really know what's going on. And so to have these video casts you guys are going to do where I can see the match, but also get you guys' insight and I learn a little bit about the history of it as I watch it. Man, there's just not anybody else out there doing that. And so please, folks, support the brand, support the Patreon. $5. This isn't one of those deals. There's so many Patreons out there where there's people who are just like, hey man, give me $5 because we need it. Ray offers so much in return for that. The uploads of, digital uploads and these video casts and all the different things he offers. It's more than worth your while. So please try it out. I promise you, if you try it, you're going to want to continue to be a patron of WrestleCopia because it's just a lot of great stuff, and it's a great value. It's a lot of content for $5. Trust me.
And I mean this when I say it too. Obviously, we can't get through everything that ever exists in the country of Japan. But when I say that Dan has everything that exists on video, I mean Dan has everything that exists in video format in regards to Japanese professional wrestling. So we're going to be covering all sorts of good stuff. And hey, send in your recommendations of what you might like to see us cover there as well. But in order to do that, you do need to join the Patreon. So be sure to do that, guys. And that's going to wrap it up here this week. Gene, hopefully by the time we return next time, my voice will be better and I can do a better Lance Russell because it was killing me not to be able to really do Lance this week. But yeah, we'll be back soon, guys, with more of this. And just want to thank you again, Gene, for coming along for the ride.
As always, thanks for having me, man. And I look forward to heading back to 1985 again real soon.
All right, guys, that'll do it here this week. But we shall return for more Georgia 81, Memphis 85, and UWF 86 very soon. I'm your host, Ray Russell. You can follow me on X at Rasslin Grenade. That's at RASSLIN Grenade. Also, follow and like me, Facebook.com/Rasslin Grenade. And don't forget that $5 all access tier over at Patreon.com/WrestleCopia. And until next time, we'll be back soon with more Regional Rasslin, where we talk the territories.